wa Kenya, nimesimama mbele zenu siku ya leo kwa heshima kubwa na natoa shukrani kwenu kwa heshima ambayo mmeonyesha.
There are few names in Kenya that stir emotion, loyalty, and history quite like Raila Amolo Odinga. To his followers, he was Baba, the father of the struggle, the man who refused to bow, who endured the long nights of detention so that Kenya could speak freely. To his rivals, he was stubborn, unpredictable, but formidable. And to history, he remains the man who, though never president, shaped the nation more deeply than many who held the title. On the morning of October 15, 2025, as dawn broke over the small Indian town of Kuthatukulamu in Kerala state, the former Prime Minister of Kenya took what will be his final walk. At about 9 a.m. on the quiet green campus of Sretharayam Ayurvedic Eye Hospital and Research Center, Raila Odinga collapsed, a cardiac arrest. He was 80 years old. Within hours, President William Ruto will confirm the news to a stunned nation.
In honor of the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga's extraordinary contribution to our nation, I have declared a 7-day period of national mourning, during which the national flag shall fly at half-mast across the Republic of Kenya and in all our missions abroad. As a mark of respect, I have postponed all my public engagements for the coming days, and I ask all other public servants and leaders to do the same so that we can join the nation in this period of mourning and deep reflection. Our former Prime Minister, Raila Amolo Odinga, shall be accorded a state funeral with all attendant honors. The Government of India, at the request of the Government of Kenya, has offered to facilitate the repatriation of the remains of our former Prime Minister. Consequently, a delegation comprising government officials and family members, led by Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, is leaving immediately for India to facilitate proper organization in the repatriation of the remains of our brother, the Honorable Raila Odinga.
In his statement, the president described Raila as a statesman whose contribution to Kenya's democracy will never be forgotten. And perhaps that's where we begin, not at the end, but at the start of a journey that has come full circle. Raila Amolo Odinga was born on January 7, 1945 in Maseno, Kisumu County. The son of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Kenya's first vice president, he grew up steeped in politics and protest. He studied in East Germany, trained as an engineer, but found his calling not in machines, rather in movements. When he returned home, Kenya was tightening into a one-party state under Daniel Arap Moi, and so began the long dance between dissent and detention that will define his life. Raila was arrested in 1982, accused of involvement in a failed coup attempt, charges he denied. He spent nearly 8 years in detention, often in isolation. But when he emerged, he was unbroken, his voice was stronger, his resolve harder. In time, his defiance helped birth Kenya's multi-party democracy. By the late 1990s, Kenya's political ground was shifting, and then came the phrase that would change everything.
Lakini sisi tukaenda juu, tukaunda National Rainbow Coalition. Na sivyo, tukasema na sasa ndio itakuwa ni jahazi yetu ambayo tunavuka naye kutoka ngambo hii kuelekea Canaan. Si sawa sawa? Alafu siku ile mimi niliuliza nyinyi pale kule Uhuru Park, ati hii mzee Kibaki si ametosha? Na mkasemaje? Nyachai akasema tio Raila alifanya makosa. Mimi nilisema, niliuliza wananchi na wananchi walisema Kibaki yametosha. Yametosha? Yametosha? Ulafi wa siasa hawezi kupeleka mtu mahali. wakati inafika ambaye kama wewe ni mwanasiasa mpaka uangalie kwenye ukuta na usome maneno ambayo iko kwenye ukuta.
That endorsement, Kibaki Tosha, electrified the opposition. It united fragmented front and led to KANU's first defeat after nearly 4 decades of power. When Mwai Kibaki was sworn in as president in December 2002, Raila Odinga stood on the podium, the kingmaker of a new era. But politics, like life, rarely follows a straight path. In 2007, Raila ran for president on the ODM ticket. When the Electoral Commission announced Kibaki the winner, the country erupted. In the ensuing post-election violence, more than 1,000 Kenyans died and 500,000 were displaced.
Fellow Kenyans, we have in the last 2 days witnessed tensions running high in our nation. Kenyans are deeply disturbed and angered by the attempt of this government to steal this election through a process that was fraudulent at every step of the way. The people know that they voted to reject the incumbent and put in place a president and a government they will have faith in. That is why they have elected me as the president. And therefore ask that this current exercise and impasse can only be resolved through a national recount in Nairobi under the full glare of media watchfulness and the involvement of election observers. Only such a process will assure Kenyans that this was a credible election. Finally, I wish to appeal to President Mwai Kibaki to acknowledge and respect the will of the people of Kenya and honorably concede defeat.
Under immense international pressure, Raila Odinga agreed to share power, becoming Prime Minister in 2008 in a coalition government designed to heal the nation. During that time, he championed reforms that will give birth to Kenya's 2010 Constitution, a document still regarded as one of Africa's most progressive. He would later say, "Kenya is bigger than any one of us." It was the closest he came to power and perhaps the most consequential role he ever played. 10 years later, in 2017, Raila ran again. The Supreme Court will later nullify the election, an African first, citing irregularities. But Raila boycotted the repeat poll, declaring it illegitimate. And then, on a church January afternoon in 2018, at Uhuru Park in Nairobi, he did the unthinkable.
I, Raila Amolo Odinga, in full realization of the high calling, assumed the office of the People's President of the Republic of Kenya. So help me God. Wakenya wamechukua hatua ya kuondoa utawala ya kiimla na kidikteta ambayo inakuja kwa wizi wa kura. Tulisema hapo mapema ati wakipiga tutapiga, wakihesabu, wakijumlisha, wakirusha, wakiiba, wakitangaza, wakiapisha, leo tumekamilisha ahadi yetu na wananchi wa Kenya.
That moment, defiant, theatrical, dangerous, sent shockwaves through the continent. For weeks, Kenya stood on edge until an image surprised the world. At the steps of Harambee House in Nairobi, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta shook hands.
Tumekuja pamoja na ndugu yangu Uhuru Kenyatta. Tumeongea kwa kirefu na tumekubaliana ya kwamba tunataka kuunganisha Kenya iwe taifa moja. We the leaders
are equally summoned to reflect on our performance toward the achievement of our nation's aspirations. This audit and introspection has been a long time coming. Throughout our independence history, we have had doubts on how we have conducted our affairs in the face of growing divide along ethnic, religious, and political lines. Regrettably, we have responded to our challenges by mostly running away from them. My brother and myself have therefore come together today to say this dissent stops here. We therefore seek your partnership in this initiative, fellow Kenyans. We are all sailing in this one ship. We must come together to scoop out the water that has been sipping, or we shall capsize. If we stand firm, we shall not fail. God bless Kenya.
It was the beginning of what they called the Building Bridges Initiative, the BBI. And though it collapsed in the courts, that handshake changed Kenya's political tone. Raila, once the nation's chief protester, had become its chief peacemaker. In 2022, backed by outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila faced off against William Ruto. He lost again, narrowly. Yet, even in defeat, he remained unbowed, rallying supporters and demanding accountability from the new administration.
Kama kwa sababu Bwana Ruto na wenzake wamekataa kutii amri na kufuata yale taratibu ambayo tulikubaliana nao, wamevunja hiyo mkataba, tunarudi uwanjani. Tuesday, tarehe 2 mwezi wa 5, tunarudi uwanjani.
By the mid-2024, Kenya was again in turmoil. The Gen Z protests, a youth uprising against inequality and bad governance, turned deadly. And it was Raila Odinga, the old warrior of protest, who reached across the aisle.
Mimi nilisimama hapa Kondele, nikasema siku moja nilisaidia Agwambo, na safari hii yeye amerudisha mkono, amenisaidia mimi. Mimi nawauliza, iko makosa hapo? Tuendelee ama tuendelee? Tuendelee ama tuendelee? Mimi nikiongea na nyinyi sasa, si tulikubaliana kwamba tunaenda kumuombea ili awe kiongozi wa Afrika? Nikiongea na nyinyi saa hizi, juzi alikuwa kule Ivory Coast, jana amekuwa kule Senegal, leo ako kule Nigeria akitafuta kura ya kuwa kiongozi wa bara la Afrika. Nyinyi watu wa Kenya mtamuombea? Mtamuombea? Wale wanasema tuombea kwamba nione kwa mkono.
It was a surprising turn. After decades of defiance, Raila chose reconciliation, not as surrender, but as legacy. A final bridge built in the twilight of his long career. Then came October 15, 2025. Raila Odinga, seeking alternative therapy, had been in India for 5 days. That morning, during his usual walk on the hospital grounds, his heart failed him. He was pronounced dead at 9 a.m.
Fellow citizens, it is with deep sorrow that I inform the nation of the passing on of the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, our former Prime Minister, Kenya's foremost statesman, and one of Africa's greatest sons. Kenya, Africa and the world mourn the passing on of a giant of democracy, a fearless freedom fighter, and a tireless warrior of good governance. Raila Amolo Odinga's name will forever be etched in the story of our republic, a story of struggle, sacrifice, courage, rule of law, hope, and of our pursuit for excellence. For decades, Raila dedicated his life to the pursuit of justice, equity, and freedom. He endured detention and persecution so that this nation might know and enjoy democracy.
And Kenya wept. Across Kisumu, Nairobi, Mombasa, crowds gathered in stunned silence. Flags fell to half-mast. The government announced a week of national mourning. A state funeral with full military honors will be held at Nyayo Stadium before the body is flown to Siaya County, where Raila will be laid to rest beside his father and son. He had reportedly asked to be buried within 72 hours. A committee co-chaired by Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki and his brother Senator Oburu Odinga is overseeing the arrangements. And on the evening of that announcement, as tributes poured in from across Africa, the chief editor of the Africana Voice, Maurice Ndole, captured the mood best.
Today, Kenya and Africa mourns the passing of Raila Amolo Odinga, a towering figure in our continent's democratic journey. Raila Odinga was a Democrat, a reformer, and a patriot who dedicated his life to building a fairer and freer Kenya. From the struggle for multi-party democracy to the birth of Kenya's 2010 constitution, his fingerprints are all over the nation's modern history. He was pragmatic, resilient, and unyielding in his belief that Kenya could always be better. Even when he stood in opposition, he worked to unite, not divide. His legacy is one of courage, conviction, and enduring love for Kenya. May his memory continue to inspire those who believe in democracy and justice.
Raila Odinga's journey mirrors Kenya's own, full of struggle, hope, betrayal, and resilience. He spent a lifetime losing elections, yet winning hearts. He was detained, derided, celebrated, misunderstood, but always present. In his voice, generations found courage to speak truth to power. In his politics, they found both the cost and the necessity of dissent. He taught Kenya how to dream and how to endure disappointment with dignity. It was not a perfect life, of course, but an honest one, lived in pursuit of a freer nation. However, now, as Kenya prepares to bury Raila Amolo Odinga, one question lingers. Who will carry the torch of defiance, of dialogue, of duty? And what does Kenya become without Baba's voice echoing from the crowd? Because in the end, Raila was not a typical politician. He was a mirror reflecting both Kenya's wounds and its will to heal. This has been the Africana Voice. My name is Steve Mokaya. Rest in power, Baba.
Round the Bay of Mexico, where the sun shone daily on the mountain top, I took a trip on a sailing ship. When I reached Jamaica, I made a stop, but I am sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a days. My head is down, my head is turning around. I had to let a little girl in Kingston town.